Hey buddies, welcome to another episode of More with Stumpo. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this episode I did with Chris Lights Out Lytle. This was a pretty exciting episode for me to do, completely different and outside of my realm of expertise on any subject that has to deal with fighting. I haven't really followed much of fighting in the last about 10 years, so it was really cool to talk with somebody who did it professionally. So Chris is also a firefighter as well, which also makes it pretty interesting to have conversations with, but fought professionally for the UFC and also over in Japan, and then bare knuckle fighting. So in this episode, we talk about a lot of the ins and outs of what he did in the beginning of his career. We also talk about him over being in Japan and bare knuckle fighting and the comparison between bare knuckle fighting versus boxing, and I think you'd find it pretty interesting on which one that the less head injuries happen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you do, please like, subscribe, comment on it if you're on YouTube. If you're listening on anything else, go ahead and just subscribe to that channel. If you want to reach out to me or Chris at all, you can follow me on Instagram at More with Stumpo Podcast, or Facebook. It's the same name. And for Chris, it'd be the same thing for Chris Lights Out Lytle for his Instagram. Thank you guys so much. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Chris, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and coming out here and recording an episode with me on my little podcast.
Of course, man. Excited. You got a lot of good people on here.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. Thank you. And now I'll pay you $20 later for saying that. All right, let me fix this video real quick. We just had it just earlier. There we go. That's a lot better. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive into this real quick. So your career in the UFC, what was that like fighting early on in the UFC?
Ooh, man, it was a totally different sport. I mean, I kind of had two real stints with the UFC, to be honest. Not really stints. The first one wasn't a stint, I would say, but I fought for him in 2000, and that was before Dana White, Zuffa, any of those people were involved. And to be honest with you, I was not impressed. When I first went there, I was all excited. I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. I went there, and like I showed up the day before, same day weigh-ins, got paid pitifully nothing, 2 rounds. I was like, what? It was the dark time for the UFC, that they ended up about 2 fights later, they sold to Zuffa and Dana White and whatnot. So as soon as I got done fighting there, I was like, I want to go back to Japan and fight because I got treated better. When you go to Japan back then, Pancras, you got treated like a true professional athlete. And I think you did when I fought for the UFC. I think it was UFC 29 or 30. So it was after that, then the UFC, Dana White and Zuffa got involved, and then I started watching that, and I was like, man, they're putting money into this. You could tell they were really trying to make a go of it. And then I was like, I want to get back there. And then I went back, and then, starting 2003, I started fighting for him again. And man, it was so fun just because it was like a family in a way, like a little brotherhood, and everybody hung out together. Like afterwards, everybody might be hanging out in somebody's hotel room or like at the bar or something in the hotel, but it wasn't like now we're like everybody, I'm going to have my after party here, and there's different camps that you go over here. Like everybody kind of knew each other. It was more like a family feeling. And that's one thing I love about what I'm doing with the BKFC right now. It's got that same feel that it's new, and people are kind of cool. And I keep telling people, enjoy this because in 10 years, it's not going to be like this. And like, what do you mean? I'm like, same thing happened in the UFC. It's just different. But it was fun being there as the sport grew up, especially looking back, because you didn't realize it then that it was going to blow up. You just thought, a lot of people looked at you like you were a nut for fighting in a cage. Like you'd say, I fight in a cage, and they'd be like, get on the other side of the street. Kind of like you talk about when your pit bull was being walking. They'd try to get away from you. So it was a lot of fun to be there, and you knew all the fighters. I mean, when I was there, I always feel like I was in the golden era of MMA, because now I look at a fight, fight card, I'm like, I don't know. I know 3 guys on the card. There's 22 guys, I'm like, I don't know a lot of these guys. There wasn't that many guys. There was 100 people in a contract. You knew everybody, and there was only like a fight, once every 6 weeks, or less than that. I think they used to put on 6 to 8 fights a year, so you look forward to every fight. You knew who was fighting. Oh, you knew all the guys on the card was going to be great. But it was cool being in that era.
So when you first started, what was more of your motivation to fighting? Like when you were
I first started?
When you very first started.
Just to have fun, man. I mean, I was a wrestler in high school, and you get out of wrestling, there's nothing else to do. I mean, you don't, unless you're going to the Olympics, I'm not doing that stuff. So I was just like, I just wanted to learn a little bit and go in there and train. And when the way I am, I'm built. Like, if I'm not good at something right away, I don't like it. You know what I mean? Like, I remember trying to play the guitar. I tried for like 5 days. Like, these fingers, I'm not meant for this. You know, I'm out. I don't know. Maybe I've just been blessed with being good at stuff right away. So when I was like, I was good at wrestling. And then when I came and started doing this, jiu-jitsu and grappling, I was beating guys, right away. People who'd been there for a lot longer than me. So I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. Then
How old were you at the time?
23.
23, okay.
And then I went and I watched a fight that the people I was training with put on, like Aaron Sullivan, and I was like, man, I gotta try this. I gotta do this. And so I was pretty young, and I just started going to the gym twice a day. I was motivated to do it, and after you start competing, you get that. You get this kind of I think wrestling's pretty unique as far as a sport. You get kind of it's a one-on-one sport, and it's like me versus that person, and everything I do over these last weeks is going to decide how well I do in this. It's complete dedication, and you get a certain level of satisfaction by being successful at that. I always tell people when I was coaching wrestling, I was like, this practice isn't fun. I'm like, no, wrestling practice isn't fun. You want fun, go ride a roller coaster. That's fun. It's not rewarding. I mean, but this is going to be rewarding. This is going to be something that will help you in your life. And like, if you could bottle up that feeling of, putting your life on hold for 3 months and then working out and doing everything and winning that fight, that level of gratification, satisfaction, it's second to none. And that's why you get all these fighters who continue to fight for years and years and years later when they shouldn't be, because they just want to get that feeling again. So kind of get that with wrestling somewhat, and I recognize that same feeling when it came to fighting. It was just me versus, in a way, me, but also this other person. But I have to do everything I have to do in my power to be able to get this victory and train as hard as I can. And just a lot of like I said, just me versus me mentally and everything to try and dedicate my life to this. So once I got that feeling again, I loved it. And so then I was just doing this kind of for personal reasons because I like to. I don't want to hurt people. I'm not a violent guy. That's the sport I chose to do. I like to say I chose it, but I think it chose me in a way. It's because it was what I was good at. So,
who have been some of your biggest role models throughout your career, or even at the beginning of your career?
I mean, Jason Gatsby was a guy, he fought in UFC a few times. And he was fighting over in Japan at the time. And he was kind of our leader of what became integrated fighting. So he was a chemistry teacher for Tech High School, just a very unique individual, man. Great guy. Moved to Hawaii. Then he just moved back recently. So we all looked up to him. But he'd been over there. And this guy started before I did. And he had to piece this thing together himself. He'd go to a Gracie seminar in California and said, man, I sleep on the mats there. I had to just do whatever to try and learn. There was nobody to teach him, so he'd teach us what he had learned over the years of just piecing it together. And then we would kind of learn from each other. Everybody would just kind of get together and be like, hey, how do you get out of the mount? Let's everybody get mounted and work out with each other for a few and change partners, and we'll come back and discuss it. So we'd kind of, well, this worked for me and this didn't work, and we just kind of taught ourselves how to fight. So it was Jason was definitely one of the guys I looked up to from my area. Other areas, some guys like Bas Rutten, he was a big name in Japan at the time, and right about that time, Tito Ortiz was coming on the scene. So I was like, man, there was just there was a lot of brand new guys who were just kind of figuring out the sport, and it was Randy Couture. I mean, there's just a lot of guys who I really like. Man, this guy's dedicated their life to this. And back then, there was no guarantee this was going to pay very much money. It wasn't paying much money. So these guys were dedicating time, energy, effort to. I thought it was awesome.
Were you ever afraid that when you were fighting in the earlier days, and these other guys too, if you ever had these conversations, that thinking about the future of the UFC or just any type of fighting like in Japan, were you ever worried about is there ever going to be a legit salary I'm going to get from this? Or is there ever going to be a time where I'm going to be getting medical benefits or a pension, or any type of retirement? Did you ever have that fear, or was it just being so young? It's just not something that you just really thought about?
I definitely didn't think about that, but I never looked at that as a career path. I remember I was training, and that's when I started trying to get on the fire department because I was working at a gym, and I remember a couple firemen would work out there, and they'd be like, "Hey, man, you should work to get on the fire department." And I was like, "Huh?" And then I started looking into it. I was like, "Man, I had done a little bit in college with forest firefighting stuff, which I loved. I thought it was kind of fun, so I was like, man, that's a good idea." And on the fire department, that was my career path. I did not think that fighting would ever be a career. I mean, fighting, getting a few $100s here, maybe $1,000. I remember going to Japan, getting, a couple $1,000s. It was great, but it wasn't like you can't live on. I mean, I didn't want to live on that. Wife and kids and everything. I mean, hustling like that all the time, trying to get by. I did not want that. So that was never really a thought. I never thought that the UFC would blow up the way it did. I thought it was this fringe sport that weird people like me liked. It wasn't for the masses, and it wasn't for a long time. And then when it became, it was kind of like, oh, cool. I mean, I didn't put all my eggs into that basket hoping that would happen.
Man, that would just scare the shit out of me, to be honest. Like, getting into something so new. Obviously, now we've rolled a couple times together now, and you know how horrible I am at it. But I've only done it for about a month and a half.
It's hard to do anything to you. Come on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like I can't imagine being a fresh face in any type of mixed martial arts and then saying like, this is the career that I want, and not knowing like I'm gonna have a nice salary with this. I'm going to have, because it's that devil you don't know, the devil you don't know of, how good am I going to be at this? And then that's having that confidence, that courage and bravery just to step in and be like, I'm going to make a living out of this. I'm going to make it my life.
So hard to do. I mean, now it is different. Like, people know there's a good salary to be made, but I mean, you never know how good you're going to be. I mean, I can think of certain guys who were out there and they were fighting. Guy comes to mind, Todd Duffy. He's had the look, the build, boom, big guy, heavyweight, the six pack, abs, just knocking people out. And he got on there, and then he fought a real tough guy. I think it was like a cop from Chicago. He beat him up the whole fight. And about 2 minutes ago, he got hit with one little punch, knocked out. His next fight gets knocked out. Well, come to find out, this guy didn't have a good jaw, no chin, so he gets hit with anything. A stiff breeze, he gets knocked out. Somebody left the door open. So the poor guy, all of a sudden, he put his whole life in here into this fight, and all of a sudden you find out you don't have a good chin. You don't know that. You just don't know a lot of little things about. I mean, there's so many guys I've seen who are like the best guy in the gym. Like, he can beat everybody in the gym. But when a fight comes, they fold. And the guy who's not as good as him in the gym, they can beat guys in a fight. So there's a lot of different factors going on, and you really don't know until you know. And that's unfortunate for some guys. And that's why I would always say, never put your whole life on the line for your whole livelihood there to come do the sport that you don't know about yet.
What would go through your head before a fight? Before any fight you would do, before the bare knuckle fighting that you do, because we'll get to that in a bit. But for the UFC fights, what would go through your head, knowing that there's about to be lights on you, cameras on you, people, eyes on you? What would go through your head?
I mean, the main thing at that point, you're basically just thinking like, okay, all I want to do is perform. If I just perform as well as I think I should, I don't care if. You want to win bad, obviously, but it's like, man, the worst thing is when you go out there, because if you've had this happen, you go out there and you just don't perform as well as you can, that kills you, man. You're like, man, I mean, nothing went right there. I'm embarrassed for not only me. You feel guilty for the people who trained you. And I've had people who I trained like apologize to me after a fight. Like, you don't ever have to apologize. I understand what you mean, but you feel bad for them. Like, dude, I let everybody in the world down. I mean, I would feel like I let my family down, my kids, because you got to understand, when you fight in the UFC, you get 2 checks. If you get a check for showing up, and when you win, you get double that money, which is horrible. It's a horrible way to do it. It's not like that in boxing. So if you show up and you're guaranteed 20 grand and you lose a fight, you get 20, but if you win, you get 40. So you're counting on that 40 grand. Like, I just spent all this time and energy. I didn't get all my money. So you feel bad. Like, I just hurt my family's livelihood now, or like the rest of my family, because I didn't get all my money. We're supposed to go here. We're supposed to do this. I'm supposed to buy, horseback riding lessons. I don't know, whatever, So you just feel a lot of guilt. And so you just like, I want to perform. I want to go out there, and I don't want to be on somebody's highlight reel, me getting knocked out. That's always like, I just want to go out there and perform well. I just want to make, sometimes you just don't. And sometimes, you feel great. You just don't know what it's going to be like out there, but you just want to go out there. I mean, getting hurt was never a concern to me. Never a fear of getting hurt. I've been hurt in many fights. I have had separated my shoulder in a fight. In the first 30 seconds, the fight went on for about 11 or 12 minutes. And I've had stitches many times. I don't worry about. I'm skilled enough. I'm not going to get killed out there, and I'm not worried about getting hurt. I'm just worried about not doing as well as possible. And that crushes you because, like I said, you spend might be 3 months training for a fight. That's a lot of time to invest in something that all of a sudden you failed at. You just don't want that feeling of, fighting is such a weird thing. We talked about earlier, when you accomplish that goal, you spent 3 months. You're at the highest of a high when you win. This guy tried hard. He trained. I beat him. One of the best in the world. And you're on this high for like a week, just above the world, on top of the world. And then it kind of goes down a little bit, but you're still on this high. And then it kind of goes away. And okay, I need to get that again. I need to get that feeling again. But the lows are unbelievably bad. Like everything I has worked for, is gone. Now I lost in the rankings. It's going to take me a while to get back to where I was. And do I want to do this? I'm taking time away from my family. It's just it's a terrible low feeling. And I don't think there's any other sport, besides some kind of combatives. It brings you those highs and those lows.
When you were going through those lows, if you had many of those at all.
Yeah, lots.
I know for me, I go through my lows and I don't even fight. When you went through those, speaking on your family,
yeah.
How did that affect your family life? Were you ever worried about I'm going to have to stop? This is just something that's just not working and it's affecting my family life way too much. Because being a fireman, obviously you already know, so you're already away from your family for an extended amount of time. But on top of fighting with that, how did your wife and your kids deal with that?
I feel like I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's the fact that I always did have the fire department, and I've had a very good family, and it's just the fact that I've had a good support system. So it's not like my life totally depended on that. I can imagine it's worse if that is your life. I always had the fire department, so life was going to go on no matter what. My kids weren't going to lack things because I didn't get my money, or I didn't perform well. The lows to me were all just not, unsatisfied with myself. So luckily I was able to kind of try to turn that into you just got to work harder. You know what I mean? So I try to use that to motivate. And I've talked to other people about that. When people are I have an anti-bully foundation. Mm-hmm. So and a lot of times I'll talk to people who are being picked on or bullied. I'm like, look, anybody you ever meet who does something great, there's some pain behind that. There's a reason. Something motivated them to try and get to work that hard. Nobody's as happy as can be. I'm just going to work all that. People, there's something motivating people that, and sometimes it's being people made fun of. Sometimes it's whatever. But that negative feeling you have, there's two things you can do. You can let that destroy you. You can help that motivate you. And I just remember having a time when, just losing a split decision. And I was just like, man, I didn't fight as hard as I should have. I didn't do what I should have. I didn't let it all hang out. So I'm never going to let that happen. And I remember being in the gym and I was like, training harder because of that. When you're tired and you don't want to run that other sprint, I don't want that. I'll do anything to get rid of that feeling. So after that, I did lose fights, but I never had that feeling again because I did what I could. I tried as hard as I could. I didn't miss out in the gym, and I was overly dedicated at going to the gym. I missed a lot of my kids' stuff because of that, but I wasn't going to have that feeling. I just couldn't do it. I could not have that feeling that I didn't do everything I could. And I think, being down like that shows you a lot about what kind of person you're going to be. Are you going to use that to motivate you, or are you going to use that to destroy you? And I've seen many people it destroys.
Did you ever go to any kind of self-help kind of stuff or any programs for motivation, leadership, continual education on yourself? Did you do anything like that at all? Or was it just more of introspective reflection on what you thought you needed and just worked on it? I
think I never went to anything like that. It was all just me thinking, sometimes I can be a deep thinker and just sit there and man, I'm not gonna lie. I can think of times after that loss I was talking about, I'd wake up at 3 a.m, couldn't get out of my head, couldn't go back to sleep. So I'd just get up and just think, and just try and go through all the possible scenarios of what I should do and what direction I should go in. And I think that's a lot of internal just dialogue and thought. And, I do certain things sometimes to try and, I don't know what you call it, meditation or whatever you need to do to try and put myself on the right path. But I'm trying to be always asking the question, why does this happen? Why? And when I keep asking why, I feel like you get to the base of the problem or what's going on, you can figure out and you can know the direction to go in. It's not always easy to do it, but just trying to figure out, I think, is the key. Trying to figure out why you're in this situation, what's going on, and what can you do to fix it. And I noticed when I really started like accepting the truth and quit making excuses for things, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because if you make an excuse, you're never going to fix a problem. Well, here's the problem. It's because of this. It's because of that. I can't get. But once you go, no, this is my fault. I did this wrong. You can fix it. You can't fix it if it's not your problem. And that's what I see all the time. When I see people making excuses or blaming something else, I'm like, you're not going to get it until you change your mindset. Until you change up here that this is not your fault, you're done. Everything's my fault, man. I do so much. You know what I mean? Everything I do that doesn't work out for me is probably because something stupid I did, I promise. And once I accept that, then I go, okay, what did I do? What should I have done? Okay, well, there you go. Now next time you can do this. So I think that's really important, is understanding that everything is in your control, really, as far as what you're doing wrong. I mean, if it's not, then that kind of sucks. You know what I mean? If there's nothing you can do about it, I don't know what to say. I mean, you have to adapt and change. I can't play in the NBA. I just can't. I'm not tall enough. I'm not. So it's like you have to change your goals and your determination. So I don't want to say anything you can't do, but you get what I mean.
Yeah. When you fought in Japan, overseas, obviously, the struggles. I was listening to one of your episodes that you did on your podcast.
Okay.
And you were talking about, you were just kind of struggling with not being able to talk to anybody at all, just because no one spoke English there. And then you'd have to go, when you were to go talk to your girlfriend at the time, you'd have to go ride your bike out miles away to go to the phone or whatever. Did that ever affect your fighting? Just not being able to conversate and kind of relate to anybody at all? Or did it just not do that at all?
Yeah, I definitely think that would affect, people don't understand like how mental fighting is. I mean, people think, oh, he's bigger, stronger, he can hit harder. Fighting is like so mental. I'm not going to say 90%. I don't know the percentage, but I mean, you have to be in the right frame of mind to be able to go out there and have a clear head and go out there. If you have stuff weighing on you, I mean, for example, and this is a little different. This is a football example, but I mean, in my opinion, I think Tom Brady is struggling right now because his family life's kind of messed up. You know what I mean? But imagine that, but with somebody trying to punch you in the face the whole time or take you down or elbow you in the head. If you're not 100% mentally focused on the right thing, that's going to be there. So, I don't know. I can't even remember what the start of the conversation. What was the question?
The question was not being able to talk to anybody over Japan. Yeah. Did that really affect your fighting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it did. I mean, that's you just. I don't know if you've ever been to a place where you just couldn't really talk to anybody for 6 weeks. You know what I mean? It's just kind of weird. You could talk to people every now and again. Some people would speak a little English. Okay, but I mean, it was just weird. So I wouldn't recommend anybody trying to do that type of thing. It's just awkward. I mean, I've had a couple experiences where I felt like when I got home, I felt like I was not shell shocked. I was like institutionalized. It was just weird for me. Like Japan was one, and I remember when I got off the Ultimate Fighter, I felt weird when I got out there. That was about another 6 weeks period where I didn't have any TV, phone, radio, really. I mean,
I bet that was amazing though.
It was great, but I mean,
fantastic.
You feel weird when you get back. I felt weird for a couple of days. I've talked to other people, and they felt like it's just different. But yeah, I was able to talk to people there, but anytime you're out of your normal routine, it just it kind of throws you off fighting.
But to go through all of that, in my head, this is what kind of pops up. And I've got my theory on Tom Brady and his wife. Was it Giselle or whatever?
Giselle, yeah.
I've got my theory on that. I'll say it real quick.
We'll hear it.
My theory is she's obviously, a model? She does modeling?
That's right.
She is so used to Tom being gone almost all the time. Tom retires, comes back home. After some time, she can't stand him, or they can't stand each other because they're so far away all the time.
Might be true.
And now they got to spend time together. They got to actually like work together, and they can't do that.
That's
so
interesting.
then obviously now they're getting a divorce because
That's
they really don't love each other the way they thought they
Well,
did.
and here's the thing: everybody's saying it's because he said he'd retire, now he's not. Is that true or not? I mean, that seems weird to me that he would just do that. Like, I don't care about my marriage. I'm going to keep, because now it's messed up for him. So that makes a lot of sense. What you're saying is,
It might not be the case.
well, and I've talked to that before to that extent. Like me and my wife was like, I know it's rough being at the fire department, but it's probably helped our marriage. You know what I mean? Because if you're around somebody all the time, sometimes you need a little. I mean, me being gone every third day might have helped. You know what I mean? So maybe that was the case with them. Maybe him being gone so much, they just had the routines and they got used to them, and now that he was back, like, this isn't going to work. And so he's like, I'm going to play football again and try and make it work. And then by that time they go, we're just not the same. That makes a lot more sense, actually. I like that theory.
That's what I think, obviously, because if I had to spend time, well, we don't need to get into that. So,
Still, man, I mean, you need breaks from people, man. You know, it's just like, I don't know. At least I do. I don't know.
Oh man, this camera just keeps messing up. It'll fix itself in a second. Yeah, so that was my theory on it. But also do you think that it made it a little bit easier for you to fight with being able to not have any of those distractions of talking to anybody else and just focus strictly on your craft and you building your arsenal of takedown strikes, maneuvers, and being able to just focus strictly on that and not having any of the outside noise?
I don't know if it would have made that much of a difference if I had other people there to hang out with or talk to, but just being over there and actually training, that was the first time in my career that I trained like I should have. You know, when I was there, we trained twice a day, 6 days a week, you know, some of the best guys in the world. So no matter what, if I was talking to people or not, I was going to get better. You know, so that was just this was my first real opportunity to be like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to be training. This is how these guys are training. These guys are, you know, Pancreas was one of the great organizations in the world at that time. So, you know, just no matter what, that was the first real experience I had to do that, and I was going to get better. Would have been better if I'd had somebody else there. I could have hung out with them, talk. I got no idea, man. It's harder to decide. Or maybe it was better, like I said. Maybe I just had to focus on that. Regardless, I felt like it helped my career a lot.
What are some of your most favorite strikes to do on your opponent?
My favorite one is probably the right hand to the body, like a double jab, boom, right to the body. If I can do that, I remember in one of my fights, I think it might have been my last one. I can't remember. Joe Rogan's like, I think Chris Lytle throws more right hands to the body in one fight than most people do in their whole career. Yeah, probably, you know what I mean? Because I just love that when that body's open. I like hitting people in the body. It just seems like it sucks, and I've been hit there, and I hate it, and so it wears people down. That's definitely one of my favorite. Another one's my overhand right. I remember one of my second boxing match ever. They took me down to a place called the New Daisy in Memphis, Tennessee. Like, all right, I guess all the people from the Midwest, if you were going to box, they end up fighting there. Horrible conditions, you know, terrible little place, no real dressing room. But they brought this guy, and I was 0-1 at boxing at that time. My first boxing match was a draw. I didn't have any amateur boxing matches. I just took the fight on a week's notice, went over there and fought a guy who was hometown guy supposed to beat me up. And they said I won, but they called it a draw. All right, cool, whatever. So I fight this guy in New Daisy, and you know he comes at me. He's trying to take it to me. I was like, man, this guy thinks he's going to win. You know, so all of a sudden, I was raw. I just hit him with this big, powerful overhand right, and he didn't put his hands down. He just fell face forward. Boom, his nose hit the ground. And blood went everywhere, and everybody went nuts. So I was like, man, kind of like that punch. Just that wild overhand right, that Chuck Liddell baseball throw. Bop, if you hit somebody with that. So if I can hit anybody with one punch, that's what's going to be my overhand right. But overhand right and the right hand of the body. It's funny, whenever I do like the commentary, you know, for the bare knuckle, we always do interviews with every fighter. And I'd say 90% of them was like, what's your most important punch? Like, the jab. I mean, everything starts with the jab. The jab, you know, you got to do control, jab. I'm like, never said that. Never do. I mean, I like the jab, but no, I'm not. That's not the most important punch. My most important punch is going to be a right hand somewhere.
Man. So what is that feeling that you get when the crowd is just cheering and screaming? What does that feel like? Man. Do you even hear them? Like,
Well, yeah, well, you hear them, but it's funny because sometimes I realize looking back, like I don't recognize, like I'll hear it, but it doesn't process sometimes. Like I remember sometimes you'll be thinking of a fight and you'll be like, my coach will be like, man, did you hear that one guy? He yelled, stand up, Lytle, he's weak. And I'm like, I did hear that. But you don't process it at the time because you're focused on this. You hear it and it's downloaded in your memory, but you don't even think about it, until later on. So you'll hear a lot of stuff. And now I can't think sometimes when I'm throwing punches and the crowd starts really getting into it and cheering real loud, that motivation, like, I got him, just keep coming, go after him. Or, or if somebody's doing that to you, and you're like, you want to be like, these aren't landing. You want to be like, no, you're excited for the wrong reason. But you hear it and you process it. I mean, man, when the crowd is really hyped in there, and it's really, here's the thing, your adrenaline goes from here to here, and you don't really, it's hard to explain. Like I've had fights where I won, and I got on there, and they ask you interview questions, and you look back and you're like, I don't remember saying that. And like, that is stupid. What am I even saying out there? What am I doing? And I've seen guys who get up there and they'll say something crazy. And I'm like, I get it. Like they're not in the right frame of mind right now. And the adrenaline is from 0 to 100. And you're up at 100 right now. And you're on this unbelievable high. And you're just saying crazy stuff. And you're like, man, what does that even mean? I don't know. And it reminds me, I had this motorcycle accident a while ago. And I got hit and run. And so I flip over, land on my head, I'm bleeding. Like the ambulance shows up and I'm just rambling, and it was like, I'm just speaking, just mad, and I'm yelling stuff. And I was like, it was the same feeling. It was that adrenaline that went real high. So you got to understand, when you have these fights and people are cheering your name and all this is going on, your adrenaline gets so high that it's hard to describe. But just think about when you're like the most adrenaline in your body, that's kind of how it feels.
So just real jittery, you're explosive.
And you're like you got a lot of energy. Everything's like hyper, like you're looking around, everything's there, and like it's just a weird thing that your brain can't even really process too much of. But yeah, you go back and watch some of these interviews that people say, like, and then they're gonna. I guarantee if you ask them, like, I don't know where that came from. That's not normally said. I'm just saying some stupid stuff that popped out of my mouth, and I don't know why that happened. So
I was always, when I'm recently starting to get into fighting and watching these. Obviously, I mean, I know some of the bigger names. I don't know a lot of the stuff about it, which is why this is really cool to be able to talk to you about it. Yeah. Excuse me. But one thing that I've always wondered is, why interview a guy right after his fight? Like, I would always imagine, like, you'd go back to the locker room, you kind of get time to decompress. Okay, cool, I got my thoughts together, and then now here comes the interview. But like, no, the dude gets the shit beat out of him, or he's got rocked in the face a couple times, and they're like, "Sir, hey, how did you think about that fight?" And then it went. And I'm like, I couldn't, if I got into a fight, which I've been in only a handful of fights back in the day. I shouldn't be interviewed right afterwards. No. Because like, I'm saying things that I don't want recorded, because it's just like, I could not imagine being a professional fighter. But then again, like, you're a professional fighter. Like, you have trained to do this. So maybe it's a lot different. So like, after a fire run, let's say, like, because you're a fireman also, I'm a fireman also. And let's say you catch a fire and it's a real good fire, you get back, and we're so used to and wanting that, like, we're wanting to take pictures, we're high-fiving in the front yard. Hey man, great fucking job, you did a great job pulling the hand line, great attack, felt a lot of heat, and we extinguished it, we put it out, we kicked its ass, we come back out, we're high-fiving, chest bumping, but the homeowner's crying because they just lost their house, and it's like, so maybe that's the kind of representation that I can only put with this. Is it something similar to that, you think?
Except only a little different as far as maybe that'd be more similar like a football game, because you have a team concept. We're doing this. This would be like maybe if you went and, there's a kid hanging out the window and you climbed up and you climbed a ladder or an aerial where you're 100 feet up in the air and you grabbed them by one hand and you saved them. That'd be a little bit different. I mean, not that you all didn't help, but I mean, that's more of like a one-on-one thing. Like, and it's hard to have that feeling with other people because they didn't do that, you did that, you know what I mean? So it's just a different level of, like, not isolation, but you're on your own, so you're the only one whose adrenaline's up at this point, you know what I mean? So it's a little bit different, but yeah, you could say the adrenaline would be the same.
Man, That actually makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Because then you're the only person. It'd be like winning, like if you're a bodybuilder and you're the one that won the competition, it's you, 100% you.
Well, in a way, but yes. But there's not another, I guess there is another bodybuilder trying to go against you. But like when they put you in the cage and there's two people, you either got to dominate him or he's got to dominate you. You know what I mean? So when he's one of the best trained guys in the world, when you beat them, that gives an extra level of like he was doing everything he could and I just beat him. It's just a little bit different, I think. I mean, even like I'd say in bodybuilding, it's just like you're not competing against him, you're competing against yourself. And it's all about what you do. Same like gymnastics, it's all about what you do. Well, in a fight, I can be doing the best thing in the world, but if he's doing it better, I can't do a lot of what I do depends on just beating him. And if I can't, like if he's better than me, there's nothing I can do about it, But I want to be better than him and there's nothing he can do about it.
What has been a fight in your career anywhere?
Yeah.
Let's go with UFC. Let's go with before UFC and with bare knuckle fighting and then fighting in Japan. That the person you were fighting, you were like, this guy is messing me up. Like he is working me over and over. Any professional fight you've done, does anybody stick out to you in your career?
I remember when I fought that. Like that Josh Koscheck. Like I remember he was a national champ wrestling this and that. I remember like he chewed on me because I knew he wouldn't. He'd get me taken down, and he kept throwing these little elbows on the side of my head, And I knew because I was bleeding everywhere. And I was like, man, this guy is cutting me open, and there's nothing I can do about it right now. I was just like, man. He's not trying to submit me. He's not trying to knock me out. All he's trying to do is get in this position, and like he's not rearing up. He's not trying to hurt me. He's just trying to cut me open, and he's doing that. And I was like, and like I couldn't move my hips out to get. I was up against the fence like this. This sucks, man. I was just like, I don't know how I can get out of this spot to improve my position to get up, And I'm just bleeding everywhere. I'm like, they're going to stop this damn fight. Because, I could see blood. It's all over my face. I look on the canvas. It's all over the place. I'm like, damn, man, how do I get this spot? You know what I mean? I remember it was funny because after it was the second round. I remember after the second round, my corner man ran in, and he's like, just a little scratch. I'm like, all right, thanks, Pat. I know you're lying. Whatever, man, I got put back in that spot in the third round. I was like, Jesus, this is not stopping. But then I got back up. And I ended the fight strong, coming after him, landing some good punches. So I like that I continue to fight. But, sometimes it's just matchups make the fight. And if, got me in a bad spot, that was just nothing much I could do about that. So it was rough.
When you're in those bad spots, what is also going through your head? Like, in your head, are you saying, man, this is just the worst thing. If I just tap it, it's going to be over. Or is there just so much grit that you've got to continue the fight that it's just there's not an option that you're going to tap?
Oh, I got to be honest. I've never thought about tapping once in a fight.
Really?
No. And like, I think after that fight and a couple of the fights I've had, I was actually, in a way, looking back, I was a little scared for myself, thinking, you'll die out there before you quit. I just fully believe that, and that's not a good thing just because fighting's a little tiny part of your life, really. It's not that important, but I'm just like, I have some kind of mental sickness when it comes to that. Same thing, like I could never pass up a fight. Like even I injured a couple of times, I had no business fighting, and I felt like you're a coward if you don't. Like when you go out there, you have to have confidence, and I'm like, if I don't have my confidence, I got nothing. I don't want to fight at all if I don't have my confidence. So I felt like, I don't care if I'm hurt or not, I'm always hurt. I should be able to fight anybody in my weight class. If I think I'm the best in the world, I should be able to beat anybody any given night, no matter what. And so I just couldn't pass up a fight, and just same thing. Like I feel like I always had a chance to win a fight, like that Koscheck fight. I got up and landed some good punches. At the end, I still felt like I could knock him out, So it's just I always feel like there's a chance, and I feel like I'm not. Endure this part, and you're going to be fine. Just wait for your time. You're going to outlast it. I still feel like, in a way, I've always looked at fighting like this. Like, let's say this is in a cage, and this is on the street, and this is for your life. Are you going to quit? Are you going to let this guy kill you? And I was like, no, I'm never going to. So I always feel like I never tapped, and I never got knocked out. So I'm like, in my eyes, I'm still going to be alive if I follow those people in real life. Like, I'm going to kill them eventually. You know what I mean? I would win. Maybe that's not the case, but that's how I see things, and that's how I had to mentally process that in order to keep thinking that I was the best in the world and to keep fighting. You know, because like I said, it's all mental. If you don't believe in yourself, I don't know how you're going to fight.
If you were to fight anybody in the history of the world, who would you choose to fight?
History of the world?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. I mean, I'd have to pick probably a fighter. You know what I mean?
You can pick a fighter. You can pick anybody. You can pick Barney if you want.
Probably not. Well, he had some problems anyway, I think. I don't know, man. That's tough. Probably like to get in there with Muhammad Ali would have been a fun one just because, you know, obviously, you know, looking back at the box, I know people talk about whatever. I still think he's probably the greatest. I know people don't agree, but here's the one thing about him people don't realize. Every fight they've probably seen of his great fights, those were after his prime. I mean, this guy fought, and when he lost his title, when he got stripped, you know, you're watching these fights, it's in black and white. He comes back, it's in color. He was out of his prime. I mean, this guy was 3 years older. He didn't train the whole time. And those are all the fights you know of his wars. He wasn't in wars before. He was in one-sided beatdowns. Probably would have kept doing that, but he got, you know, he didn't go to Vietnam, so he lost about 3.5 years, and he lost his title, and all this other stuff happened. But I mean, he got out of shape then. He partied. I mean, not party, but was going to parties, eating a lot, and slowed down a step. It wasn't in his best anymore. But man, that guy was. I mean, the way he turned stuff around, I would like to get in there and just see how good that guy was. That'd been fun.
I liked watching his videos and the respect like that Mike Tyson had for Ali when he met him when Tyson was back in the day.
I remember those.
Did you ever watch any of those Tyson fights?
Oh yeah, I watched them all, man.
Really? So that guy he seems like obviously still getting new into it, but he just watching his videos now, there is just something behind. I just see a person who's on the attack, who's just like, there's nothing stopping that. And that's like, did you ever see any fighters when you would fight them that just, they had the tenacity and the aggressiveness against you? You're like, this dude's not messing around at all. Like, it's just pure anger coming straight at you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the weird thing about fighting, there's a lot of that, you know. I mean, I remember when I fought Nick Diaz, you know, he's kind of like that. Like, man, like, he was a young guy. He was hungry. He was wanting to fight. And, you know, I felt like one of the few fights I was, you know, winning the fight. And at the end, I was gassed. It was outside. It was in the heat. It was so hot. I remember I took him down, which if you ever watch me fight, I don't take anybody down. So I took him down the last round. I'm holding him down. And my corner's yelling, stand him up, ref. And I was like, no, you know, stand him up. The finally they stood us up with about 2 minutes ago. And he came and punched me in the eye, cut me open. I pulled guard. He went the distance, and he won a split decision because, like, I was tired, you know. But that dude just kept coming forward the whole time. And I could just tell, like, that made me want to quit the sport because he was a young guy. He wasn't even a name at the time. I was like, dang, you know, I was like, I'm getting beat by it. I fought in the UFC, I got beat by this young kid, and I was just not happy. And then, you know, a year later, he's in the UFC beating people, so I felt better after that, you know what I mean? But yeah, that dude, you could just tell the dude had no quit in him, and he was, no matter what, like, I'd busted him open the second round. He had a big cut on his head, and I was like, cool, they're going to stop it. They didn't stop it, and I was like, God, come on, stop the fight, I'm tired. And then he just kept coming forward the whole time, so you could just tell that dude had a different level. Something was different about him.
For your training to fight for multiple rounds, what was your training schedule like? You talked about training twice a day, 6 days a week when you're in Japan.
Yeah.
When you're here in the United States, what was it like? How many rounds would you go every training session?
It kind of depends. I mean, luckily, what I would do, especially towards the end of my career, I'd worked out pretty well. Then I'd go to there was a place called Acceleration, Indiana. Have you ever heard of it? They like do these things. A lot of us to help people with their speed. I didn't use it for that. I would go there and they hook you up on like a treadmill, and you have to do these sprints, 20-second sprint, 15-second sprint up at 22 degrees incline, you know, and go all the way up to 35 sometimes. It'd be 8-second sprints. They'd pull you back with these rubber band type things, you know, and do little sprint workouts. And then sometimes it'd just be the plyometric workout where you have these rubber band type things on. You're jumping over boxes. So just those real explosive, fast twitch muscle fiber, explosive movements. So I do that for about an hour, come home, you know, rest up, eat something, and then, you know, cut grass, whatever I do around the house, I don't know. And then I go to this gym that night and spar. And when you're doing that type of thing, it's kind of like your the guy in the middle. So they'd be like, okay, Chris, we're starting to grind. Like, you're on your back, go. And then this guy jumps on you for 2 minutes. And then, okay, now a new guy comes in for 2 minutes. The next guy comes in for a minute. Okay, now you get a minute break. Now we're doing it again. Now Chris's guy's on your back for 2 minutes. And then you have to get up. And then now this guy's on your back now. Okay, now you're starting mound it, just throwing new guys at you the whole time. And that's unbelievably tough, because you get tired and they don't. And so by the end, you're getting beat up by everybody in the gym, no matter how good or bad they're. So it's just different. That's how you have to train people to fight, because you got to be used to that pace. It's different. That guy's going to have energy and you don't. So you got to get used to that. So I'd usually do that 2 days in a row. And the third day I'd go to the firehouse. Firehouse, I had my weightlifting routine, which was all endurance-based weightlifting. And then I would do more sprints. So the sprints would be like Tabatas, like a 20-second run, 10-second off, 20-second run, 10-second off. 3 5-minute rounds of that to make it just simulate the fight exactly. And I would do that. And then I'd come back to the gym the next day, So, and it was always funny because the first day out from the firehouse, I'd go and I'd go to that acceleration and I'd kill it, And then I'd go to the gym, kill it. The next day I'd go to acceleration. I don't know if I'd kill it, but it'd be all right. And then I'd go to the gym, and I'd always get beat up. Like, I'd get beat by all kinds of people. The second day in the gym, because I'm just worn out.
Real quick, was it you feeling that you got beat up at the end of the day because you knew you what you could have done, or was it like you actually getting beat up?
It wasn't really getting beat up because your coach wouldn't let you get beat up.
Yeah.
I'm getting ragdolled around because I'm worn out.
Gotcha.
Just So I'm like, when I should be taking this, like, you'd get some taking, but you just wouldn't be able to. You weren't doing what you did the first day because you're worn out. I mean, like you train hard. That's your fourth hard workout in 48 hours. So you're not just going to keep. At least maybe it was just because at that point I'm doing that. I'm in my mid-30s or early 30s. And I've been already fighting for 8 to 9 years, so my body gets worn down a little bit more. So I just know, that it got tougher, but. When I got tougher, I try to be more like a Spartan attitude when it comes to working out. Like not like every camp. I never had one camp where I drank any alcohol. I never had one camp where I ate any fast food. And it was always like that 6 weeks for a camp. I was going to be good and not do anything. I was like, man, I'm working full time and trying to do this stuff. These guys don't work. A lot of them don't have kids. It's just training. So I'm like, I got to do everything I can to match them or better than, because they have a better opportunity. A lot of guys were training in these mega camps with some of the best fighters in the world. Not that I had terrible people, but I wasn't training with, the top guys in the world. I was training with a lot of guys we were piecing together here.
The only thing that keeps screaming in my head is still working at the firehouse. If you guys are just busy running all day and all night and then waking up to go into fight.
That sucks.
That keeps popping in my head of just how miserable had that been.
And it was rough. I remember. Luckily, I remember being younger. I didn't need that much sleep for some reason. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I could get by. I was like, man, I'd be tired. But you go to the acceleration or St. Francis Sports Medicine, a different place, the same kind of stuff. But I just remember I'd be tired and I'd be dragging, and I just wouldn't. You didn't do that good that workout, but then I'd go home and I'd rest. Maybe take a nap or something if I had to. Like, I'm not cutting the grass today. I'm taking a nap. I'll do it tomorrow. And then, but one thing I've learned, from the fire department is I think it really affects your hormone levels, testosterone and everything, but not being able to get the proper sleep. But I've just been doing that most of my life, so I'm just kind of used to it, and I need to do better on that and work on it, but I just I've been doing it my whole life, and I just don't sleep very much. I maybe get 6 hours, and if that's good for me, but I know I should probably get more, but what do you do? It's what you're used to, you know what I mean? But, I got used to that then, and I could still perform afterwards, and I wouldn't perform as well, but I was like, I'm not going to, looking back, I know I should have been smarter about saying, you know what, your body is tired, you need to take a day off. I just couldn't do that mentally. I was like, I'm not doing it, because if I start doing that, then you go in the fight, you're like, well, I didn't train as hard as I could have. You know what I mean? So I gave up. I'm sure something, it was a trade-off mentally. It helped me, but physically it probably hurt me.
So you mentioned hormone levels and testosterone levels. I did an episode with Dave Grossman, and we talked about sleep deprivation and the correlation between sleep deprivation and suicides and depression, anxiety, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, all sorts of stuff. And then a lot of it correlates to sleep deprivation. So do you think that a lot of fighters now deal with those same issues with like sleep deprivation and low testosterone levels and hormone levels, or do you think that they're monitored? Because I don't know the legality of it for fighters, but are they able to monitor those and supplement with that at all, or none of it?
Man, with the fighting now, with UFC, it is so rigid. They got the USADA, which is a drug testing company, and they're super strict. I mean, I heard him talking the other day to somebody, I can't remember who it was, but they got tested like 19 times in a month once. And there's like, you're like,
are you serious?
Yeah, they're like, they kept testing the person. I don't know if they heard that he was on something or if they were just trying to make a point. I don't know what it was, but it's like, I mean, like, if you leave the state or the city, they have to know where you're at all times. And if you try to leave, you have to tell them where you're going to be, and they can send somebody there. And if not, if you do that a couple times, and if you're not there when they come to your house, you get suspended. They're super strict and tough, so you cannot take anything. Like if your hormones level are bad, doesn't matter. You can't take anything. Doesn't matter.
Wow.
Which is weird to me. You think like as long as you're in a quote unquote normal range, you think you'd be fine. That's not the case, though.
Well, it does give a benefit to, or a leg up on a lot of the other competition. Like I know for me, like, you know, I've been on it because obviously with my career, and I felt like crap, and my body was like, my buddy told me, he goes, man, you should go get tested, like your hormones tested. I'm like, I don't know if I should. And then I went and did it and found out that I've just had really, really low testosterone levels. So then obviously been on that, the TRT, and it's changed everything.
Sure.
I still struggle with sleep. I've got issues with my sleep and all that, but it has changed completely with my weightlifting regimens, with my rehabilitation and muscle recovery. So I was like, man, I wonder if like a lot of fighters do that as well. But that makes more sense too. If professionally fighting, you don't want to have guys having a leg up on each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's why. That's to me, if they would make it to where they would say, look, you know, testosterone range should be between 400 and 800. Stay in there and you're cool. They don't do that though. Like that's my point. Like as long as if you're at 1200, that's going to be a problem. You fail. You can't do that. I mean, so I don't think that should be right. But I mean, to me, what if somebody like I said can't sleep well and all of a sudden they're 300? They have a huge disadvantage. You know what I mean? So I think it should be as long as you're in legal ranges, you'll be fine. That's not the case. I don't see it that way. I don't know why. Maybe because there's a way they can mask it. I don't have any idea. That
would be an interesting topic to have with somebody. I'm trying to have on a. He calls himself the ball doctor, but he does a lot of like testosterone replacement therapy kind of stuff, and he and I are working out something about him coming on and talking about it, which that would be a really interesting topic.
That'd be real nice. And man, I think this is a field, man. I got a guy listen to his podcast. His name was David Sinclair.
I've heard the name, yeah.
Like he's a Harvard geneticist, and just they're talking about a lot of like life extension and making you younger for longer and just different things to take. And fasting is one of the biggest things they talk about, getting proper sleep, just different things like this. But I definitely feel like here in the next 10 years they're going to do a lot of things you're talking about, like find out the perfect level of hormones and what each person should be a little bit different, but what you should be eating, how much sleep each person needs. I think that's going to be kind of like maximizing your potential is going to be big in the future, I think.
A lot of that stuff, I agree with you on that. And a lot of that stuff comes back to, because obviously I'll listen to other podcasts as well. And there's other things that are involved with low testosterone in males, like the type of clothing you wear. Like,
what?
Not like, oh, okay, he dresses feminine. Like, it's more of like the plastics in your clothing. It's weird. So like, it's not like defined, this is finished studying. It's something they've been continuing on doing, but like the plastics in your clothing, obviously anything that is touching your skin is going to permeate into your skin and absorb into it. So if you're having clothing that you're sweating into, and that sweating is going into higher heated areas, i.e. armpits or groin areas, your body's absorbing whatever that is. And then if it's absorbing whatever it is, it could also damage the cells and the hormones in your body.
What kind of plastics are you wearing your crotch and armpits? What are you doing?
I got some red Solo cups.
You go to some different kind of clubs than I do.
It's like the a lot of those like types of clothing that you look into, like the polyesters, and if it's like a straight cotton, then you got really nothing to worry about.
Okay.
You're wearing wool, but it's like if you're wearing like the polyesters, they got plastics and rubbers and stuff like that. And so when I was listening to that, I'm like, that is so hard to believe. And then also one that's really weird was male taint sizes, which to me blew my mind when they were talking about this. But this was scientifically founded. Measured from the 60s, 1960s to now, the sizes of that has shrunk. And that means that there's a decrease in testosterone levels in males. A male in his 60s or 70s today has a higher testosterone level than a male in his 20s today.
You know, I wonder if a lot of this stuff, I mean, I always feel like America is a weird country in many ways, but part of it is like we have so many, you know, food allergies and different problems. I think a lot of it is like the different processed foods and everything people are eating. And I think all this could have a huge factor in a lot of our genetic problems. I mean, how many people do we have who are just a lot of different...
Like a gluten allergy.
Think of, or milk or nuts, or you don't go over to Africa and like they're allergic to nuts. That's just not a thing. You know what I mean? So, but they're eating real foods and we're eating all these processed. I think all the processed stuff we're doing is catastrophically bad for what we're. I think they know it now, but I think people are going to find out more in the future. Like, man, you cannot be eating that type of stuff regularly all the time.
Well, even like the food pyramid, like that was created. The food pyramid was created by like an ag company.
Oh, of course.
So it's like, if I own all
marketing.
the ag, it's all marketing for me.
Well, it's just like when they really. I mean, I've heard that the sugar people were the ones who came out and be like, fat is bad for you. Low fat. I mean, low fat. I think sugar is the worst thing you could be. I mean, and people didn't really realize that for a long time. I mean, think about that. I mean, a lot of this, and it goes back to my distrust for any kind of media. Like what I'm being told, you have to do your own research and look into it because that might not be the case. I think a lot of people like, you always got to follow the money. If there's money behind something, there's always money behind something. And whoever's funding that's probably has a reason why they're doing it. It's probably not for your own good.
There was a campaign back in the day. And I can't remember the guy. Oh, God dang. I could picture his face, but I can't remember who it was. I think it was either in the 50s or 50s through 70s. But he wanted women, I believe it was women, to start smoking. So, because women at the time didn't smoke as often as men did.
Half your target audience,
That's
right there.
Half your target audience. Exactly. Yeah. So they started like sexualizing cigarettes. It was something like that, but it was campaigns to doing it. And that's to get women to start smoking cigarettes. And then also, like I find it so interesting. With types of advertising, you have certain companies that will do, like here's a conspiracy that I like. The planet, the war, like the war on saving the planet type of people. Yeah. Those are the organizations that are, now this is one, I don't think it's true or not, but the ones that fund that are the ones that benefit the most from it. So if you own all the positives of one part of a company, you want to own the negatives as well because that's extra profit for you. So like if I'm a business and let's say 100 people love my business, right? But I've got 200 people that hate my business. I want to own the company that is against my business because that money's going to go to them and will come back to me. And therefore now I own the ones that love me and hate me.
Makes a lot of sense.
I mean, think of it like that too. That's how I would do it at least.
Especially, I mean, this isn't exactly the same thing you're talking about, but you're talking about the, the environmental stuff, Once again, I think, okay, Al Gore was all this, what is that video he had out? Something about, I can't remember, he had a big movie about
it was about global warming.
Yeah. But yet this guy spends millions of dollars buying houses in areas he says are going to be covered in water in 20 years. They don't believe this stuff. This is all propaganda for them to make more money. I mean, if you push this agenda, now is our climate changing? Yes. Has it always done that? Yes. Is there stuff we're doing that's probably destroying it? Probably. I mean, I'm not denying that that's really happening, but I think the solutions they're given are not realistic at all. And anyway, even by their own measurements, if we do this, is it going to help? Probably not. So what are we doing? We're making people certain people get a lot of money. Yeah. I don't understand. Like if you want some real solutions, we can talk. But the solutions they give, they're not real. They're not going to make the difference. So I just don't really. I have trouble listening to what they're saying. So
it's tough. It's tough because if you're only the one country like us, like the United States, if we are the only country doing whatever we can to save the planet, by far there are plenty more people on this earth. Like you go to India or Asia where they're just dumping all of their trash in the rivers and just they have no regard for any of that. Like look at to them first before you look to us.
I understand all that, man. It's funny. I've seen this picture. It's like it has a whole globe, but it's got this little circle. It's in Asia. It's got like India, China, a couple of places. Like more people live in this part than the rest of the world. So I'm like, yeah. I mean, we could do everything in the world right, and it could make very little difference. But like I said, even if that's my thing, and our solutions, in my opinion, what they want to take my money and do with aren't going to help. So where's that money going? Who's profiting from that money that you're doing? And I know it's a lot of these politicians or whatever. So I'm just like, nah, I'm not interested in helping you out. That's not my goal.
You look at Nancy Pelosi, and then like with insider trading, which everyone knows is happening, which somehow it's okay for her to do.
No, she doesn't know what her husband does.
Oh no!
I mean, I made this bill, but I don't know what his business are. I mean, how would I know that?
I don't know what he's
how's
investing
that legal? How is that in any way legal? I guess they're the people making the laws. I remember a few years ago when they came out like, oh, everybody in the Senate's been doing insider trading. And all the people in the Senate we got to put a stop to this. You've been doing this for 50 years and now you got to stop it? Now that you got caught? No, I can't trust those.
And it's still happening. There's people that I follow online, like on TikTok, there's a guy who goes, I'm going to make the decisions, whatever Nancy Pelosi or her husband puts in to invest, I'm doing the same.
Exactly.
And he was making money all the time.
Of course he would have.
Because obviously she's got the say-so on which businesses come in. But let's go ahead and talk about your bare-knuckle fighting stuff that you do. I watched one of your fights because I was talking to somebody about you, and they said that I was telling them, like, he does bare-knuckle fighting too. I said, I'm going to watch one of the fights. So I watched one of your fights, and holy crap. Dude, that is what goes through your mind like before you're about to like, I'm going to just fight this dude. I'm just going to bare-knuckle fight him. Like, what is going through your head? Like,
which fight was it? You know?
Oh, I could look it up real quick.
Did I knock him out?
I don't remember. I think you did. I think you did knock him out, actually.
Okay.
Let me look it up. I was watching it just a few days ago.
Yeah.
And it was just, let me go back to this.
So if I knocked you out in the first round or the third round?
I think it was the third.
Okay.
Was it the Drew Lipton?
Okay, that was the first round.
First round, okay. Yes, because it was shorter because I watched that one and then I watched another one. Yeah.
Okay. It was funny, that one. That was funny because the thing was going through my head at that fight. I was pissed off because, I'd been telling everybody, I was like, man, this bare knuckle is awesome because you get UFC or boxing still. Like now, there's a lot of money in there where everybody's worried about their position and their ranking and, their sponsors. So there's a lot of thought going on. So this has turned into more an athletic contest than a street fight. Like I'm going to take him down. I'm going to hold him down. I'm going to out jab him. I was like, bare knuckles not like that. Bare knuckles a fight, just a fight. People, a fist fight. Two guys will come in. Somebody's gonna try to knock the other guy's head off. That's it. And that's why I love it. And you got to watch because if you love that raw side of it that everybody loves at the beginning of the UFC, it's kind of gone away. And with boxing, so you got to watch this sport because of that. That's how bare knuckle was to me. And so I tell everybody this, and then the fight I'm doing, like the first fight, awesome, not on TV. These guys beat the brakes off each other. Second fight, pretty good. Then they started putting them on. They started airing the ones on TV, and it wasn't quite as good. And there's this heavyweight fight where they were hugging each other the entire fight. Nobody won a fight. I'm in the back, like losing my stuff. I'm getting mad, and I remember the owner of the thing came up, and he always brings this up. He's like, I walk up and I'm like, what the hell are these guys doing? I've been telling everybody this is exciting. These guys are hugging each other. And he was like, whoa. He's like, that's what I decided. I like you a lot, man. You got the right mindset for this. So then I went out there and I was just like, I'm taking this guy's head off. I was mad. I was like, I've been telling everybody. I was like, I'm going to go out there. I got to start this. Good things coming. So I just went out there and try and knock his head off right away, man.
So to get your mindset right to fight somebody, because I did sparring. I did boxing for about 6 years, just mainly training, and then did a little bit of sparring.
Yeah.
That was it for me. It was very tough to hit somebody that I'm not mad at.
Yeah.
It was very hard. Do you ever have that feeling of, man, like I'm not really mad at this dude. Like he's just stepping in the ring, or is it just like it's business time?
It's business time, and usually one thing like I would think, man, like to get myself in the right mindset, I'd always be like, okay, it's like, especially with UFC, you're getting paid half or double, whatever. You get paid double if you win. I was like, this dude He's trying to take half your kid's money. He's trying to take half that money that's going to go to your kids. You work so hard to spend time away from your family. If there's a guy trying to take half of it, that's never going to happen. Like, this guy's literally taking money out of your kid's mouth. You going to let that happen? So I tried to get myself like, no, I'm going to go out there and try to take this guy's head off. Afterwards, we'll be cool. But right now, you're trying to take my money. You're trying to take stuff from my kids. I'm not going to let that happen. I did all this work for this. We're not friends. I'll be cool and respectful to you, and afterwards I'll be real cool. And afterwards I'll buy a drink and we'll hang out. I'm always cool with people afterwards, but right then, no. I got to get myself in the mindset to go out there and try and take you out, whatever that means. I'll try and. Some people have to hate somebody to fight them. I didn't have to hate somebody, but I had to think that this, in all reality, it was true. This guy is trying to go out there and not get what's coming to me. No, I have a problem with that.
What has been your favorite bare knuckle fight to watch so far?
Artem Lobov versus Jason Knight won. The first time those two dudes fought, it was crazy, man. Those guys, I was doing commentary for it, and those guys just beat the brakes off of each other, man. The place was so electric. It was in Jason Knight's hometown. A fight broke out in the crowd over there. They tried to throw the guy over the balcony. I was like, oh my God. It was just. These guys were landing so many. There were so many knockdowns. It was. I remember I got up. I'll get up on the apron in between rounds to listen to what the corner was saying, and the guy kind of tried to hand me something. It was a tooth. His tooth got. And I was like, dude, good God, these guys are cut open bad. It was crazy, man. But that was as fun as it got. That was a good fight.
For anybody who's not ever been to like a fight or a boxing match or anything, I just went to my first boxing match, like a legit one with a bunch of people at it, which was the Slugfest recently, which is firemen versus police, which by the way, I have an identical twin brother. Like I've talked to you about it. I challenged him for next year to fight because he's a cop.
That's so too funny.
I was like, dude, this would be great. He boxed. He was the better boxer than me when we did it. He was better than me, but obviously I've been training a little bit more now, and I'm like, this would be great. Like this would get the crowd going. Like I want to put on, because I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, I'd want to put a show on. Like I'd want to like talk trash on Facebook to him and try to get more people involved to come in, and I'd want to put a good fight on. But like being in the audience and watching someone get popped real good, and then just the crowd jumping up and screaming. I was one of the guys just jumping up and screaming like, "Get up! Get his head out!" Like it was so much fun to be involved in it. So do you enjoy that aspect of it, being the commentator, kind of being more of like just a viewer now?
I love it, man. It's tough being a fighter. You never quit being a fighter. So it's funny. Mm-hmm. Like when I first retired, I was just like, man, I feel weird. I should be here doing it. It's not, something's not right, But now doing the commentary, I have a purpose. But it was really good. My commentary partner told me, he's like, you're the color guy. So your job is you've been a corner man, many times. So your job is to tell the viewers pretend you're in his corner. What would you tell him? Instead of waiting until the end of the round, just tell him right now. But do it for both guys. So I was like, all right. Mm-hmm. So then I started describing. So now I feel like I'm still kind of involved with the fighting, but then I also get the best seat in the house. I'm watching these fights, and yeah, man. You get vested in it like on a great fight. Man, you love it. You know what I mean? Especially, you don't know how many fights we've had. We had one the other day. A guy got knocked down 3 times in the first round, came back and knocked that guy out the next round. I was like, super exciting fights, man, where people are getting knocked down. I love when people get up off the canvas and knock somebody else out. That shows nothing but heart and determination. Like, you've already been rocked, you've already been hurt, and you get up and finish him. That's great. So I love it when that happens, and we get a lot of those fights, man. So they're a lot of fun to watch. Bare knuckle is as exciting as it gets to me.
Do you think that it's going to grow as much as, or at the same rate for the UFC? Like a few years, it's going to be going, not a ton of views on it, but then just blowing up. Do you see that kind of happening with it?
I actually feel like it will blow up, and this is why. Like I said, whenever I talk to people, I'm like, "Are you a MMA fan?" Like, "Oh yeah." I'm like, "Oh, are you an MMA fan or UFC fan?" Like, what do you mean? I'm like, "Well, do you watch Bellator or PFL or anything else?" Like, "No." Well, then you're a UFC fan. UFC fans, a lot of those people, like if it goes to the ground, like, man, stand them back up. Like they're bare knuckle fans and they don't know it. You know what I mean? They've never seen bare knuckle. They watch it like, oh my God, this is good. Yeah, I think it will be good because I think once people see it, I think they're gonna like it. It's not what I thought it was. I remember when I first heard bare knuckle, I saw videos like Facebook, Joe Riggs does bare knuckle fight. I'm buddies with Joe Riggs. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with Joe? I'm like, what is he? What? I said, he was in Europe. I'm like, what? I thought it was going to be in some warehouse with bales of hay around and people like with cars betting money. Like, what the hell? Why would, underground? I was like, what's wrong with this guy? So I watched it. And halfway through the fight, I was like, how do I do this? How do I get in touch with these people? And I finally got a hold of them over in London. They flew me over and I fought. Went legal here. So I did that. I came back to Indiana. I tried to get it legalized here. They laughed at me. And then about 6 months later, they legalized it in Wyoming and BKFC was formed. So it's I understand why people would think it's not what it should be, but I think it's very entertaining and exciting. So I think as more people see it and don't just hear bare knuckle like, ugh. After you see it, I think like, okay, it's highly skilled. It's very skilled, but it's also very entertaining.
I watched a couple of the fights, and now I can't remember the name. I'm horrible with names. I remember when they fought. And it was surprising. I saw some of these like real overweight guys like fighting, and it kind of surprised me on how well they were doing. And I was like, just imagine like seeing myself like in a bar or something, and a guy says something, and I go to fight him, and he just beats the brakes off of me, and I'm just like, this guy's an overweight fat dude, but like it just shows that, and obviously like rolling in the gym too, there's guys that are overweight that got some pounds on them, that it's just they're good, and they're able to manipulate their body in certain ways, and they have these knowledge on all these moves. It's given me a lot of respect for these guys. Like for a lot more people now, when I walk around, like I'm not the biggest, baddest dude around. Like typically when I'm walking around, I'm typically a larger person than most, but I'm not the biggest by any means. I'm only 260 and I'm 6 foot. That's it. But it's like, it's given me such a respect my size doesn't mean anything. I mean, my size only means that when I'm 260, I'm going to be 500 pounds when I hit the floor. Like that's what that means. So like, it's given me a respect for this, and it's given me more respect for the bare knuckle fighting, watching a few of those fights, obviously on YouTube. Where else can people find those fights at?
Man, there's an app called BKFC. Just go to your app store, and any smart TV or anything, you can download on there. But I mean, it's so awesome because it's like $4.99 a month, and I'm like, for $60 for the year, that's like the less than one UFC. I'm like, dude, we're giving away. I'm like, you need to up it to at least $10 a month. But I mean, they just want to get people to watch first. So I was like, man, I mean, for like I said, we put on about 2 fights a month, so for about $2.50 a fight. It's absolutely nothing. It's so cheap, but it's.
What was that app called again?
BKFC, Bare Knuckle Fight Championship.
Okay.
And you talked about. I remember very earlier in my career, probably 1998, when I was fighting. I remember going to a fight, and there was this big tattooed up guy in the back, and he's walking around just mean mugging everybody. I was like, oh my God, that guy's gonna kill somebody, And he fought this guy. He came out there, and the guy's kind of has a spare tire. Didn't look like he had great muscle to him, so I was like, he's gonna kill him. So the big muscular, guy with all the tattoos, he comes up and he starts trying to punch, and he's backing away, he's turning his face. I'm like, this guy's afraid to get hit. And I think this guy's intimidated people his whole life. He's never really fought. He got beat. And that was when I was like, dude, you cannot judge a book by its cover when it comes to fighting. I've seen a lot of guys. I've had several fights like that where you're like, well, this guy's going to win. And the guy who looks like he's going to get killed is tough as nails. You don't know a lot of these people. So it's a different era now. You can get a guy who weighs 150 pounds, looks like a scrawny nothing, who's been training for several years, and they will beat up a guy who's weighed 250 pounds, I guarantee it. And you can beat up by a guy who weighs 150, and you'd be like, that's embarrassing, but not really. The guy's been training for 10 years. Well, what do you expect? So it's just a different era. That's a real possibility now. You have somebody who is extremely good at all aspects of fighting, and they don't look it.
That is something that has really been, it's been really cool to see for me because I've got nephews now, and they're, the oldest one's 10, well, technically 22, but he's married and off and all that stuff, but he's 10 years old, and I'm trying to push them because I've enjoyed doing jujitsu, like just the small amount that I've just been able to do. And I'm trying to push them, guys, go give it a shot. Do jujitsu. And he did karate for a couple of years. And I was telling them, if you guys focus on this kind of thing, I feel like you're going to be safe. I know that you'll be able to handle yourself, and it gives you the confidence. So the day that I'll tell you this because I thought this was pretty funny. So the day I rolled with you, and obviously got folded up like laundry a couple times with you. But afterwards, I was so proud that I rolled with so many different of all the guys that were there. I rolled with, I think, 3 or 4 of the other guys. I was so proud that I got to do all of that, that when I went to the gym afterwards to go do some extra like cardio and extra weightlifting. And I had so much confidence in me that I walked in there. I felt just like, I just fought like 4 people, like not really fought, but then I saw a cute girl and I went up to her and I was just hitting on her. But I was like, and I never do that kind of stuff. Like, but it was that confidence booster. So I've been trying to push my nephews. I've been trying to push all my friends to start doing it. Because obviously the stuff that I went through this year so far, but this has been like a huge like anxiety reliever, depression reliever. Like it's the best medicine, I think.
That's what, I know you've had Brian Alvey on here. He's talked about that too before. Just, what his CT and military, coming in, starting to do jiu-jitsu, it is therapy. And I can testify to that. If I don't go to the gym for a week, let's say I'm busy, my wife will be like, you didn't go to the gym because I'm having, like, you leave the refrigerator. I'm just in a bad mood for a stew. What are you doing that? It's like, who cares? So I come home from the gym, the house could be on fire. I'd be like, it's only possession. Yeah, I'm cool. And like you talk about that confidence, you go into place. I've been fighting and doing this so long, I don't even realize it, but I just never fear any type of thing like that. And I can't imagine being like a small female, like they always have to worry, like walking out to your car, just little things like that. I just never even think about that type of stuff. Or somebody walking on your side of the street, you gotta think these things through. I never think about that. You know what I mean? And you just have a different level of confidence and calmness, is knowing that you're going to be fine. Like 99% of the world doesn't know how to throw a punch, I promise. And you just have a different level of confidence. I believe you. Like what you're saying is 100% accurate.
Yeah, and it just motivates me more to want to keep going back. I haven't been back in like a week and a half because I injured my back and I didn't want to mess it up anymore. But I will go back in a couple more days. And I want to roll with you again at some point. And at one day I think I'm going to actually pull a move that.
All right. Well, you know what we're going to do?
I'm going to try.
You know what we're going to do too? We're going to bring some boxing gloves. I'm going to get you ready to punch your brother in the face.
Let's do it.
All boxing is just getting more relaxed out there. If you're confident and relaxed and you can see punches coming, you can just move out of the way a little bit. You're going to be fine. He'll gas out. So we'll work on that.
His ass.
He can't listen to this podcast.
No, he can't. No, actually, he and I were texting before you came over here, and he's like, "Hey, you still doing that episode with Chris?" I was like, "Yeah, I think so. Yeah. He should be here." And he's like, "Cool." He's like, "Hey, let him know." He's like, "Whenever we go to go do our fight," he's like, "You let him know I'm gonna kick your ass." And I was like, "I don't know, man. If I get trained with whoever trains with me, it's whoever does." And hopefully one day you and I can spar with that. That'd be awesome. But I just. I want him to train too. I told him, I said, the only way I'll do this is if you actually train, because I don't want you to like not train, because I'll train. Yeah, I know I will. I got the time and I've got the motivation to do it. And it's not only just for the Slugfest; it's just to do it, and I want to continue to do it.
I think everybody should be not have to. I think everybody should go through a fight camp at some point in their life, because just understanding, like, I've dedicated this 2 months or whatever it is. Going through and doing everything you can to be successful that day, change your diet, working out this many times, doing everything. And then the week before that, build up that anxiety feeling you get, and to actually go through that and accomplish that, even if you win, lose, or draw, it doesn't matter. I think you're a different person. I really do. I think it's very beneficial for people to do that type of thing. So I think everybody should do that, no matter what, if you win or lose. That's not the point. It's the point of going through, dedicating yourself. And you know how many people, you do not know how many people I've seen who can't do it, and they will find an excuse, and they will find, I hurt my shoulder, they'll quit, and they just won't show up. A lot of people do that. It's so nerve-wracking. I remember one guy I trained on the fire department, he was like, Chris, we're at the event. I've never felt like this before. I was like, dude, you need to calm down. You're burning your adrenaline right now before the fight. We need to hold this till later. I took him out in the hall and calmed him down. I used to love it, dude. I used to have I'd have like 5 people show up at the fire department sometimes, we'd spar there in the bay, like people training for Slugfest. It was awesome. I used to love when people trained for Slugfest. They'd come to my firehouse and work out with me. Man, I get so excited just thinking about it, just because it's so different for me. It's something I haven't done in 9 years, 9 years now. Because when I did do it, I was told I had to stop because I was coming with black eyes and busted lips, and they said it just didn't look good for the fire department. So I was just like, I guess I'll stop sparring. And then at that point, I just kind of stopped training. Then I started doing weightlifting, because at that time I was like 170 pounds. Stop it. Yeah.
I started doing weight training afterwards and all that. And
Wow.
so I ended up stopping. But now I've picked up jiu-jitsu because Brian Alvey challenged me to do it. And that's typically how I start new things. Like I had a guy named Dave Bowers on my podcast and he challenged me to work out with him. And he's notorious for getting guys to throw up and not finish the workout because he's like, you've already started your weightlifting journey. Now it's time to take it up to the next level. And it's like, all right. So I do it with him. And luckily I haven't thrown up like outwardly, just inside I've thrown up into my throat and all that kind of stuff. But those kinds of weightlifting regimens, I love challenging myself. So I think this will be a really good challenge for me to do. Nice. And I think I feel pretty good afterwards. And
feel great, man. You move better.
Yeah.
You know.
I think I do a lot better with it.
Yeah. So
what does your future hold, not for just the fire department, but for your fighting careers?
I mean, man, I'm dedicated right now to just trying to make this bare knuckle fight championship blow up. A couple things. You know, I remember my second boxing match I talked to you about the New Daisy. When I went there for that fight. And I remember the guy who checked me in, he started talking and I just said, huh? And he said it again. I looked at my trainer and he's like, okay. We left. And I was like, I got scared because I couldn't understand a word he said. He's a former boxer. You know how many my favorite boxers and just a lot of people I know, they have mental problems now. They have a lot of, they don't speak well. I'm like, oh, what's going on? I remember my trainer told me, Keith Palmer, great guy. He was like, don't worry, man. We're not going to drive this car till the wheels fall off. And I was like, I know what he means. Like, we're not, he was like, and I remember after one of my fights, my boxing match, it was like a war. He's like, all right, it's good. I mean, it's like, you got 4 left. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, we're not having more than 5 wars. We're not doing it. Okay, we're stopping your career at that point. He actually cared about me not wanting me to have brain damage. So that's the thing. Boxing's horrible for it, and I'm glad I had to quit. I didn't want to at the time when I had to quit because I signed a UFC contract. They wouldn't let me box anymore. But looking back, my style, I was a grinder inside. I'd be messed up now. I'd have speech impediment. I'd have problems. I'd probably forget things. Who knows? You know, a lot of those football players with the CTE problem, you know, they end up killing themselves or somebody else. That's a common problem with fighting, but it's not going to be the case with bare knuckle because when I came out of retirement, you know, I'd been retired for like 6 years. I'm like, I want to do a bare knuckle fight. My wife didn't want me to, and I explained to her, like, you understand, you can't box, you can't trade punches. This isn't like normal. I can't even. You have to change your whole style to be in and out. Boxing, I can block with headgear. I can do all this stuff. You can't do that with bare knuckle. You have to be in, out. It's different. So I went and I did some fights, and that was the case. You know, it's different. But in a boxing match, you might take, let's say, 20 punches around to the head, and every time that brain is going against the skull, causing brain damage. Same time with the lineman hitting all the time, boom, boom. So you do, you know, a boxing match that goes 8 rounds, you might get hit 100 times in the head. You're not going to get hit 100 times in a bare knuckle fight. If you get hit like that means you're going to be cut open, bleeding. The fight's going to be over. So it is worse for you superficially. You're going to get cut more, I promise, but you're not going to get the brain damage. So that's all I care about. Is I want to give people an option. If you want to do regular boxing, cool. But right now, bare knuckle's illegal in many places. So I'm like, man, we got to get this legal. So if these fighters want to have an option where they can still, like, you got these older UFC guys who still want to compete, but I mean, the grappling hurts their back too much, and the jiu-jitsu's hard on them, the wrestling. But they would still want to throw punches, and they still have the ability to, but they don't want to get brain damage. Bare knuckle's a perfect option for them. I don't want to make those guys go do real boxing where people die every year from brain bleeds every year. People don't die in bare knuckle. They're not going to, I don't think.
Do you think it's more similar to, like, what's the sport, rugby, comparative to football, because they have all the protective pads to make sure that you're safe, but in return, it's similar to like firefighting gear we're wearing now.
Yeah.
At higher temperatures that we're able to withstand, but that means we're just getting deeper and deeper into the fire, and also the material that's burning is just getting hotter, and we're just not noticing as much. Yeah. And I had Steve Dillman on, he passed away recently, and Steve's like my grandpa, basically. Yeah. He's taught me a ton of stuff. But he talked about, in his episode, he talked about back then you only had a 3/4 coat, you had a trench coat and 3/4 boots and a helmet. And you'd go in, no mask, no SCBA. Wow. You had on gloves, and you'd stay down low. If you needed air, you'd either open up your nozzle and get your face up close to it to get some fresh air, or you'd go outside to throw up to come right back in. And it's like you sit there and think about it. Then we had that talk of, PPE, which is personal protective equipment, and it just keeps you safer, but does it really keep you safer? And because you're getting yourself into shittier situations, which is why you see Maydays happening at a higher rate. And that it makes the similarity, bring it closer to football versus rugby. And then I didn't think about that connection until you just talked about it with boxing and bare knuckle fighting.
Man, both very good points you just made. And I've brought up the football rugby many times. What I keep telling people, I said, I know how to stop the concussion problem. Leather helmets. I'm like, what? I'm like, go back to leather helmets. I'm like, well, you can't do it. I'm like, look, I don't care what kind of helmet you make. If you're going 25 miles an hour and you suddenly stop, you're going to have brains hitting the skull. You're never going to stop this. You know, in these linemen, they keep hitting each other because they lead with their head. You're not going to make rules against hitting with your head and then stop. People are still going to get hit in the head. I mean, it's just... Now, you know what? If they go to leather helmets, you're going to protect your head. Just like rugby. I mean, those guys are big, strong, tough, mean, and they tackle, but they don't do it with their head first, and they're not going to have these problems. They just don't have the problems. It's not rocket science to figure this out. I mean, yes, dude, is there better protective equipment? I mean, the gloves on your hands weren't meant to protect. They're made to make the fight last longer is why they did it. You know what I mean? So you can take more damage. You know what I mean? So the brain can take more damage. That's not a good thing. You know, I get it. You know, 100 years ago they didn't know or care or whatever, but now times are different. I think people should understand that. And to me, when you call boxing the sweet science, yes, hit, don't get hit. Bare knuckles like that on steroids. You cannot get hit. And you have to hit. I mean, you got to be cleaner with your punches. You can't hit me over here. Hit me over, you're going to break your hand. You know, you got to be hit here. You know, you got to be precise, accurate, and you can't be there for the return. So I think it is the sweeter of the sweetest sciences, and I just want more people to have options to be able to do that. And I'm telling you, all my favorite boxers end up with brain damage, and I hate it, man. I mean, I hate seeing those guys it's impossible for it not to happen. If I've seen you fight that many times and you put on wars, you're gonna have problems, and I don't want to see that anymore. But it's always gonna happen if you have a fighter like that.
Something that's always stuck into my head with the more I go through life is safety third. With Mike Rowe, always says safety third. And I started saying that last year at the fire department with one of my guys that I work with. His name's Jacob Hershey. He's a real smart guy. He's good dude. He's trains every day, and he's whatever training convention's happening, he's typically at it. But we'd always talk about safety third. And what I would talk about with the guys is, why do we wear safety vests on vehicle extrications? It doesn't make you any safer. It's just so other cars can see. Other cars can see you. If you're wearing a safety vest, does that automatically make you think, oh, hey, the other cars can see me. I don't have to worry about it as much. I've been a victim of that. Just the other night I put on a safety vest, and I was like, they could see me. And I'm on 135, and I've got my back to traffic, and I'm like, how stupid am I? No, I got to kind of keep my head kind of turned, and I got to face away from the traffic. And it's like putting the vest on. If I don't wear my vest, which that may or may not have happened before, like, you know, obviously, you know, I've always worn it, Chiefs. But when I didn't have it on, when I'm mowing, I'm keeping an eye out on traffic even more. So, like, I'm the best at keeping myself safe, not someone else or some protocol. Man, that makes more sense for bare knuckle fighting.
Agree. Man, you know what's funny? I remember I went to Thailand once, and I did one of the craziest things ever. I rented a moped, and I'm driving around. Dude, this was nuts. I mean, there's no stoplights. I mean, there's people weaving in and out. They're just stopping in the middle of the street. I was like, oh, my God. Like, it was nuts. But I was looking around like, I didn't see wrecked vehicles. You know what I mean? So these guys, you are constantly on the lookout. They are, and so they stop. They like, if they wreck, there's no insurance. Mm-hmm. So if you wreck, your car's destroyed. Doesn't matter if it's your fault or not. So they're constantly on the lookout for other people hitting them. They're better drivers than our people are because, I mean, they think they're a crazy driver, but they don't get hit. Mm-hmm. Because they're better, like you said, because they weren't. Yeah, same thing you're talking about, like with the safety vest. You're more cautious. You care about. I don't care if there's insurance. Like, you know, I can't get my car destroyed or I can't drive anymore. So they are more conscious of that. Even though it seems like they're crazier, they might be, but they're safer. They're not getting hurt like that. Like I guarantee more people are probably getting hurt here in accidents because if you're driving, like the time I got on my motorcycle, like so I'm driving, all of a sudden somebody ran a stop sign and hit me. Well, I trusted that they were going to follow the law, and they don't. You know, I trusted that people pay attention, and they don't. I'm putting all my faith in the fact that I'm doing the right thing, so is everybody else. Not necessarily the case. So that's one thing I've learned about riding a motorcycle now. So I'm always on alert. I'm looking around, and if I have to know who's behind me. If somebody pulled over, can I get over or can I not? You know, you have to pay attention to these things. Mm-hmm. I think riding a motorcycle helped me learn that, and I think that exactly what you're talking about. If you should be the person who's in charge of your safety, not trusting somebody else who can do that.
Man, so I had another question related back to bare knuckle fighting. Do you see yourself doing more matches and fights for bare knuckles?
I do not. I mean, man, I wanted to at one point. I remember I came to my guy Pat. I was like, "Hey, man, they offered me this fight," and he just looked at me all mad. "You're done." And I was like, "Man," I want to do another. And I had wrist surgery, and that kind of kept me out for a while. We're like, "Man, let me see if I can do like I said, 6 days a week, 6 weeks my camp." I'm going to see if I can do this. I went in, felt first day, boom, felt great. I can still move good. I'm dominant. I'm good, I'm killing people. Second day, I come up, oh shit, I'm tired, It's like, okay, I can still do this. I came in. Third day, no, I'm like, I couldn't get through a 6-week camp. So in my eyes, if I can't do it the way I want to, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go out there and embarrass me and myself because something I want, even though I can't. Like I said, I look at people who, like anybody in the 40s, a lot of people in the UFC, they failed testosterone, growth hormone, these tests. They're not doing it to give them an advantage. They're doing it to keep up. They're doing it so they can train 5 days in a row. That's the only reason they're doing it. It's not to go, so, you're a young guy who can get, they're doing it to keep being able to train all the time. And if I'm not willing to take about the growth hormone or whatever to keep me in there and do that again, I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I'd love to, for many ways, but unless... I just don't see me doing it again. I'd like to, but I'm just not going to. Plus, like I said, I'm trying not to get hit too much anymore. I still love sparring. I'll go in there and go, but only people I trust who aren't going to go try to knock my head off. You know what I mean?
Chris, is there anything you want to promote before we finish up with this?
Oh, man. The bare
push
knuckle's
whatever
great.
you want.
I got the Lights Out bourbon that I have. I think I have a Lights Out vodka is going to be coming here soon.
Oh, wow.
And this vodka is the best thing. It was funny when I went to taste it. The guy was like, "Here," gave me like a little glass one. Oh, drinking that straight room temperature. Let's try it. Like I took it. And I was like, not water, but it was like it didn't have a terrible aftertaste. I was like, oh my god. It's like, and he's like, how they talk about Tito's? You got the charcoal distilling. It's been through 8 times. Like, yeah, he's like, we put this through 32 times. Well, I got to buy this. I got to be part of this because it's the smoothest vodka I've ever had. So I think that's going to be coming soon. But yeah, got the Lights Out vodka here, which is a fantastic 100 proof bourbon. I always tell people, if you like me as a fighter, try it because of my name, and then you'll buy it because you like the taste. It's a good, very good bourbon. So please check that out. So it'd be great.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, man, and coming out here.
Of course, man. This is fun.
You guys have made it all the way to the very end of the podcast. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to our entire conversation. I know it went a little bit around to a couple different topics, but that's just what I love to do. And I love having these conversations with people. And I really enjoyed my conversation with Chris. I learned a ton about the MMA community, the bare knuckle fighting community. And are you guys going to be following up with this bare knuckle fighting championship stuff? Because I know I am. I think I'm going to subscribe to it. And so that way I can start watching these fights happen. Because I watched a couple of them on YouTube and they are intense. And watching Chris's fight on YouTube was awesome. So if you guys want, go ahead and follow him on any social media platform as well. Go ahead to my Instagram, follow me. And I hope you guys have a blessed day.